Carl Jung explored why individuals with what we now recognize as empathic abilities face a deeply painful psychological paradox. Their greatest strength often becomes the root of their suffering. Jung discovered that empaths unconsciously attract people who project their own shadow onto them. Individuals who resent the empath's emotional openness because it reminds them of their own emotional numbness. He found that the more genuine and emotionally radiant a person with a well-developed feeling function becomes, the more they threaten the psychological defenses of others. What Jung termed shadow projection creates a repeating pattern. Empaths are both sought after and secretly resented for possessing what others have lost or buried within themselves. Today, I'll uncover Jung's most unsettling insight into empathic psychology, and why he believed this dynamic either completely destroys sensitive individuals or transforms them into what humanity most needs for its emotional evolution. This pattern that led to Jung's most chilling realization emerged through many of his clinical cases. Individuals with extraordinary empathic depth who seemed to attract people that would eventually turn against them with unexplainable hostility. Jung repeatedly observed what I call luminous emotional authenticity in these patients. They could instantly sense another's pain, respond with genuine compassion, and create safe spaces where people felt truly seen and understood, often for the first time in their lives. Yet every intimate relationship followed the same devastating cycle. Jung wrote, "These individuals draw others to them like moths to a flame." Yet those same people soon develop an unconscious resentment toward the very qualities that first attracted them. It's as though the empath's light exposes shadows others cannot bear to face. People would confess their deepest secrets, find relief and healing in the empath's presence, and then, suddenly, begin to criticize them, undermine their confidence, and abandon them altogether, often accusing them of being too emotional or too intense. Jung realized this wasn't ordinary relationship dysfunction. It was what happens when unconscious individuals encounter someone still connected to their authentic feeling nature. The pattern he observed became one of his most profound insights into human psychology. Authentic emotional expression awakens unconscious shame in those who have betrayed their own emotional truth. If you've ever been told you're too emotional or too much, remember this: your empathy isn't excessive, others are simply too numb. Jung's research into this phenomenon led him to what modern psychology calls psychological mirroring theory. When individuals with highly developed feeling functions engage with emotionally disconnected people, they unconsciously reflect back the emotional authenticity those people have long abandoned. Jung found that most people disconnect from their genuine emotions early in life as a means of survival. They suppress sensitivity, conceal vulnerability, and build false personas that gain social approval at the cost of emotional vitality. What I call the authenticity wound explains how people cut off from real feeling develop hidden hostility toward those who haven't. The empath's natural expression of emotion becomes a painful mirror of what others have lost. Jung noted that empaths often fall into what can be described as the mirror trap. Their mere presence stirs up repressed emotions and buried pain in others, creating deep discomfort in those who have constructed their identity around emotional numbness. The people entangled in this dynamic experience what I call projection amplification. They unconsciously blame the empath for making them feel emotions they've long avoided. The empath becomes the scapegoat for pain that existed long before they entered the picture. Even more disturbing, Jung found that many people are unconsciously drawn to empaths precisely because some part of them recognizes what's missing. They're magnetized by the empath's emotional vitality yet secretly resent it, as it exposes their own emotional emptiness. This, Jung concluded, is the central psychological paradox affecting sensitive individuals. His most unsettling discovery was how empaths become targets for what he documented as shadow projection. When people unconsciously transfer their own rejected qualities onto the empath and then attack them for embodying those very traits. Through his analytical work, Jung showed that those who resent empaths are actually reacting to disowned aspects of themselves. The empath's sensitivity reminds them of their own buried tenderness. The empath's authenticity highlights their own falseness. What makes this dynamic especially cruel is that empaths often possess the very qualities these people once had, but were forced to suppress. Jung observed that when individuals attack an empath, they are, in truth, attacking what they have destroyed within themselves. The resentment they express isn't directed at the empath, it's aimed at their own forsaken emotional truth. This gives rise to what I call the innocence-punishment dynamic. Those who have lost their emotional innocence through trauma or conditioning unconsciously punish those who have managed to preserve theirs. Comment below if you've ever attracted people who later turned against you without reason. I recognize shadow projection when I see it. Jung documented how this dynamic manifests in subtle yet devastating ways. People criticize empaths for being too sensitive, all while secretly wishing they could feel deeply again. They mock genuine compassion as naive, when in reality, they've simply become cynical to protect themselves from pain. The most insidious aspect of these attacks is how often they come disguised as concern or advice. You need to toughen up, the world will eat you alive, you're too trusting. Such statements expose the speaker's own emotional wounds while attempting to dim the empath's natural light. Jung recognized that these reactions weren't born of conscious cruelty but of unconscious self-hatred projected outward onto someone who embodies what they can no longer access within themselves. Through his work with empaths and their relationships, Jung identified 4 distinct ways people unconsciously attack empathic individuals for their genuine emotional expression. Type 1. The emotional critic. Jung described people who specifically target an empath's emotional reactions. These individuals have repressed their own feelings so deeply that authentic emotion in others triggers shame over their inner emptiness. What I call the feeling police are those who insist empaths are too emotional or inappropriate, having internalized the belief that emotion equals weakness, and projecting that belief onto others. Type 2. The authenticity attacker. These people unconsciously resent empaths for being genuine because they've built their lives around false identities. Jung observed that individuals who hide behind masks feel threatened by those who can live without them. What I call the performance police condemn empaths for being too real or socially inappropriate, when in truth, they've simply forgotten how to be authentic themselves. If you've ever dimmed your light to make others comfortable, comment, "I will no longer shrink to fit their emotional limitations." Type 3. The vulnerability violator. Jung noticed that some individuals specifically target the empath's openness and trust. These are people who've been so deeply wounded that they've closed their hearts completely, and now unconsciously punish empaths for keeping theirs open. What I call the trust destroyers take advantage of empathic generosity, only to later blame the empath for being too trusting, rather than acknowledging their own betrayal. Type 4. The light dimmer. The most dangerous kind Jung encountered were those who worked deliberately to erode an empath's confidence in their own gifts. Disconnected from their own inner light, they cannot bear another's radiance. What I term the brightness reducers use subtle psychological manipulation to convince empaths that their sensitivity is a flaw to fix instead of a gift to honor. If you've realized that others' resentment of your sensitivity reveals their own wounds, comment, "Their attacks on my light expose their inner darkness." Understanding which pattern affects you most is crucial, because each requires a different approach to what Jung called the protection of the authentic self. Jung also identified 3 distinct dangers that make this psychological pattern a serious threat, not only to individual empaths but to humanity's collective emotional evolution. Danger 1. Authenticity erosion. Jung found that constant exposure to resentment and criticism causes many empaths to doubt their own emotional reality. They begin suppressing their natural responses to fit in with those who cannot handle real emotion. He wrote, "The empath who abandons their authenticity to gain acceptance loses the very quality that made them valuable. They become another emotionally dead person in a world starving for emotional aliveness." Jung referred to this as the dimming epidemic, empaths hiding their light to avoid triggering others' unconscious hostility. Danger 2. Psychological self-betrayal. Jung documented how empaths often internalize the criticism they receive, starting to see their empathy as a weakness rather than a strength. They begin to believe they're too much or too sensitive, when in reality, others are often too little and too numb. The greatest tragedy occurs when the empath turns that same hostility inward, becoming their own emotional assassin. Danger 3. Collective emotional stagnation. Most perilously, Jung observed that when empaths suppress their authenticity, humanity loses its emotional pioneers, the very people capable of modeling healthy emotional expression. Jung called this emotional evolution arrest, the point where those most capable of guiding collective growth retreat into hiding to protect themselves from unconscious attack. He wrote, "The suppression of empathic individuals represents humanity's unconscious rejection of its own emotional potential. We attack in others what we most need to reclaim within ourselves." For this reason, Jung considered the protection and development of empathic individuals essential to human psychological advancement. To address this, he developed what I call the authentic self-preservation protocol, a structured method for maintaining empathic gifts while defending against unconscious projections from others. If you found people who celebrate rather than criticize your sensitivity, write, I found my tribe, those who honor authentic feeling. Phase 1. Recognition and validation. Jung taught individuals with empathic gifts that the resentment directed toward them is never personal. It is the result of shadow projection from people disconnected from their own feeling function. He explained that hatred aimed at an empath's authenticity is really self-hatred turned outward. The empath is not the cause of the problem. They are merely the mirror reflecting another's inner wound. Jung advised empaths to reinterpret criticism and hostility not as truth about themselves, but as valuable information about the critic's psychological condition. This is the foundation of Phase 1, recognizing projection and validating one's authentic emotional reality. Phase 2. Boundary crystallization. Jung discovered that those with heightened empathic sensitivity require what I call energetic boundaries, the ability to express their genuine nature while remaining protected from others' unconscious projections. Comment below if you're ready to protect your empathic nature while serving only those capable of receiving it. I choose conscious empathy over unconscious absorption. This phase involves learning to distinguish between constructive feedback that supports personal growth and projection-based attacks that attempt to dim authenticity. Jung referred to this process as developing psychological discernment. If you've learned to separate genuine truth from shadow projection, comment, I know the difference between truth and shadow. Phase 3. Selective engagement. The final phase centers on what Jung called conscious relationship choices, the ability to connect deeply with those who value authenticity while maintaining distance from those who resent it. Jung emphasized that empaths serve no one by dimming their feeling function to appease those who prefer emotional numbness. Their genuine expression acts as medicine for those ready to heal and as a mirror for those prepared to see. This stage requires developing what I call vibrational matching, attracting people who resonate with authenticity rather than those who fear it. Jung's insights extended beyond therapy, encompassing historical figures who embodied empathy despite criticism for their emotional depth. The case of Saint Francis of Assisi. Successful integration. Jung studied how Saint Francis maintained radical empathy and emotional openness despite constant judgment from religious authorities who favored emotional suppression. Francis embodied what I call authentic integration. Though accused of being overly emotional and excessively compassionate, he never dimmed his empathic response to suffering. His spiritual authenticity challenged a system that had reduced religion to intellect devoid of feeling. Jung noted that Francis's strength came from understanding that criticism of his empathy reflected the spiritual poverty of his critics, not a flaw within himself. The case of Vincent van Gogh. Unprotected sensitivity. Jung also examined Vincent van Gogh, whose extraordinary emotional perception fueled his artistic genius but left him exposed to others' unconscious resentment. Van Gogh's letters reveal how he was repeatedly criticized for being too intense, too emotional, too sensitive. Unlike Francis, Van Gogh internalized these judgments and began turning against his own empathic nature. Jung concluded that Van Gogh possessed the visionary empathy required for greatness but lacked the psychological protection to sustain it. His tragedy was not his sensitivity. It was believing that others' inability to handle it meant something was wrong with him. Jung's own light protection journey. Perhaps most revealing was Jung's own account of navigating professional circles that often dismissed or resented emotional depth and psychological insight. He discovered that his capacity to perceive inner truths threatened those attached to psychological falsehoods. His choice was stark: dim his perception to gain acceptance, or maintain it and risk isolation from those who feared authentic seeing. Jung's breakthrough came when he realized that safeguarding his empathic gifts served not only his own individuation, but also the collective advancement of psychological understanding. He emphasized that empaths need what he termed vibrational sanctuary, relationships with people who appreciate, not resent, emotional authenticity. Jung wrote, "The empath cannot thrive in emotional isolation, yet cannot survive in relationships that attack their authenticity. They must build conscious community with those who celebrate, not suppress, emotional aliveness." 3 types of supportive relationships. Type 1. Fellow empathic individuals. Jung stressed the importance of connecting with others who share empathic gifts. These bonds are marked by mutual recognition, emotional safety, and deep appreciation for sensitivity rather than criticism of it. Such relationships often form quickly because both parties feel profound relief at finding someone who doesn't try to dim their light. Type 2. Emotionally evolved non-empaths. Jung noted that some individuals, though not naturally empathic, have done enough inner work to value and protect empaths. They understand empathy as a strength rather than a weakness and often act as bridges between sensitive individuals and the broader world, helping to create emotionally safe environments. Type 3. Conscious light appreciators. Finally, Jung identified people who, regardless of their own empathic capacity, consciously choose to honor and defend authenticity in others. They recognize that empathic individuals play a vital role in humanity's emotional evolution. Recognition signals. Jung outlined clear signs for identifying safe and supportive relationships. They ask about your emotional experiences with genuine curiosity, not judgment. They appreciate your empathic insights rather than mocking your sensitivity, and they protect your emotional energy instead of draining it. They encourage your authentic expression instead of asking you to suppress it. They see your empathy as a strength, not a weakness. The community building process. Jung taught empaths to reveal their authentic nature gradually, observing how others respond. Begin by sharing small expressions of empathic insight and notice whether people appreciate or resent your emotional awareness. Pay attention to whether they respect or violate your boundaries. Increase your authenticity with those who show understanding and create distance from those who attack your emotional nature. Jung emphasized, the goal is not to hide your light, but to share it with those who can appreciate its beauty rather than resent its brightness. He viewed the healthy development of empaths as essential not only for individual well-being but for humanity's collective emotional evolution. Jung wrote, the empath who integrates their gifts while protecting authenticity becomes a beacon for others seeking to reconnect with their emotional truth. They prove that sensitivity and strength can coexist. The 4 stages of light integration. Stage 1. Recognition without suppression. The first transformation occurs when empaths learn to view the resentment directed toward them as projection, not as valid feedback. Jung referred to this as projection immunity. He observed, wisdom begins when the empath stops believing that others' inability to tolerate their light means they should dim it. The problem lies not in being too much, but in others becoming too little. Stage 2. Boundary development without hardening. This stage involves cultivating energetic protection while remaining emotionally open. Jung called it selective permeability, the capacity to stay empathic while defending against projection. He noted, the integrated empath learns to distinguish between authentic emotional connection and psychological attack disguised as relationship. They remain open to love while becoming immune to hatred. Stage 3. Community creation without compromise. The third transformation arises when empaths stop seeking approval from those who resent authenticity and instead focus on forming connections with people who value it. Jung wrote, the empath's evolution depends on releasing the need to be understood by everyone and focusing on being truly known by the right people. The quality of connection matters far more than the quantity of acceptance. Stage 4. Service without sacrifice. The final stage embodies what Jung called authentic service, using empathic gifts to help others while maintaining firm boundaries against those who would exploit or resent them. He wrote, the fully integrated empath serves from overflow rather than depletion. They offer their gifts to those capable of receiving them without demanding validation from those who cannot. This integration becomes cultural healing. Jung believed that protected empaths serve a crucial evolutionary function. They demonstrate what healthy emotional expression looks like while helping others reconnect with their own buried authenticity. He wrote, the empath who preserves their light in a world that often prefers darkness becomes living proof that emotional death is not inevitable. They carry the flame that others may use to reignite their own emotional aliveness. Dangers on the path to integration. Pitfall 1. The revenge trap. Jung observed that some empaths, after recognizing how they've been mistreated, develop resentment toward those who attacked their authenticity. They begin condemning others' emotional numbness the way others condemned their aliveness. He warned, the empath who responds to unconscious attack with conscious attack has learned the wrong lesson. Understanding projection does not justify projecting in return. Such individuals risk becoming what they once suffered from, those who punish others for being different. Pitfall 2. The superiority complex. Jung documented cases where empaths used their insight into unconscious dynamics to feel superior to those who lacked emotional depth. He called this enlightened arrogance. Jung wrote, the empath who believes their emotional aliveness makes them better than others has missed the point entirely. Their gift exists to serve healing, not to create hierarchy. Pitfall 3. The isolation justification. Jung found that some empaths use their understanding of projection as a reason to completely withdraw from challenging relationships. They convinced themselves that anyone who couldn't appreciate their gifts was unworthy of their presence. He cautioned, true integration means maintaining authenticity while remaining compassionately available to those ready to receive your gifts. Isolation serves no one. Pitfall 4. The light dimming. Most dangerously, Jung observed that some empaths, despite intellectually understanding projection, still chose to suppress their authenticity to avoid conflict. They knew why others attacked their light, yet continued to shrink from it. Jung emphasized, understanding why others resent you does not remove the pain of being attacked. The empath must develop real inner strength, not just intellectual insight. The integration maintenance practice. To ensure continued growth, Jung developed a set of ongoing practices for maintaining authenticity while protecting against projection. Regularly evaluate which relationships support rather than drain your empathic energy. Make conscious choices about when to engage empathically and when to uphold protective boundaries. Stay connected with others who share similar sensitivities and experiences. Accept that some individuals may never be capable of valuing genuine emotion. Focus your energy on serving those who can receive your gifts instead of trying to convert those who resent them. Jung saw these practices not as self-protection alone, but as essential disciplines for preserving humanity's emotional evolution, ensuring that those who carry light do not extinguish it to survive. Jung wrote, "The authentic empath does not try to force their light on everyone, but ensures that their light continues burning for those who need its warmth." Jung understood empathic psychology not as an isolated personal trait but as part of humanity's collective emotional evolution. He viewed authentic, empathic individuals as essential for humanity's progress toward deeper and more genuine emotional expression. Those who manage to preserve their feeling function in the face of unconscious attack, Jung believed, serve as living proof that emotional aliveness remains possible even in a world numbed by disconnection. They are emotional pioneers, guiding others back to their own hearts. The historical pattern. Throughout history, Jung observed, empathic individuals have acted as bridges between humanity's emotional past and its emotional future. They carry forward emotional wisdom during times of collective numbness and become models of healing once society is ready to receive that wisdom. What begins in one person as individual authenticity eventually manifests in the collective as cultural evolution. These empaths are, in Jung's words, keepers of the flame, guardians of feeling in humanity's dark emotional ages. Modern manifestations. In the modern era, Jung believed that what we now refer to as empaths may actually be individuals attuned to collective emotional trauma that requires conscious integration. They sense and respond to buried feelings that the collective psyche has repressed but must eventually bring to awareness for healing. According to Jung, this process reveals several critical truths. The cost of emotional suppression on both individual and societal well-being is immense. Authentic feeling is essential for true human connection beyond surface-level interaction. Emotional intelligence must become central to leadership, creativity, and collective decision-making if humanity is to evolve consciously. Jung's core insight. The empathic individual, Jung taught, often feels collectively what others feel individually but suppress. Their intense emotional responses are not personal weaknesses but reflections of what the entire culture must learn to process consciously. Service through authenticity. Jung's crucial realization was that those with empathic gifts serve humanity best not by dimming their feeling function to make others comfortable, but by embodying emotional authenticity, demonstrating what aliveness truly looks like. He saw that empaths contribute to human progress not by becoming emotionally numb like everyone else, but by remaining emotionally alive in spite of everyone else. Their presence becomes a living form of medicine, a remedy for what might be called emotional evolution arrest, the collective stagnation of feeling that breeds numbness, division, and despair. The ultimate integration. Luminous compassion. At the highest level of empathic development, Jung observed, individuals learn to hold their sensitivity with both strength and compassion. They preserve their authenticity while recognizing that others' resentment often arises from pain, not malice. This state, which can be described as luminous compassion, represents the ability to shine one's light fully while simultaneously feeling empathy for those who cannot yet bear its brightness. Transformation of relationship patterns. Jung repeatedly noted a striking pattern in his clinical practice. Empathic individuals often attract people who are initially drawn to their light but eventually turn against them with inexplicable hostility. Yet through Jung's integration method, this pattern could be profoundly transformed. Those who practiced it learned to interpret resentment toward their authenticity as information about others' unhealed wounds, rather than as evidence that something was wrong with them. They no longer sought validation from those who resented their gifts. Instead, they discovered their true community, people who celebrated rather than feared their empathy. These individuals began using their emotional sensitivity to serve those capable of receiving it, rather than trying to convert or please those who could not. In doing so, they fulfilled the purpose Jung saw for all authentic empaths: to illuminate without forcing, to heal without absorbing, and to love without losing themselves. Most importantly, they stopped dimming their emotional authenticity to accommodate the world's preference for emotional numbness. Jung's final observations revealed that these individuals had come to understand a profound truth. Their empathic nature was never a flaw to be corrected, but a gift to be protected. They realized the problem was never their emotional aliveness. The real issue was the emotional disconnection in others, and the unconscious resentment that arises when people are confronted with the vitality they've lost within themselves. This insight led Jung to what he considered his most important discovery about empathic psychology. Those who resent your authenticity are not reacting to you, they are mourning the abandoned parts of themselves. Their hostility toward your emotional aliveness is not hatred of you, but grief over their own suppressed emotional truth. The core revelation: your empathic nature isn't too much for this world. This world has simply grown too disconnected from its own emotional potential. You are not broken because others can't tolerate your feeling function. They are wounded because they've learned to tolerate emotional numbness. So the true question isn't whether others will resent your authenticity. Some inevitably will. The real question is, will you protect your feeling function while holding compassion for those who have lost theirs? From victimhood to conscious service. Jung's integration method offers a clear path forward, from unconscious victimhood to conscious service. From hiding your gifts to sharing them wisely. From suppressing your authenticity to letting it shine for those who need its warmth. You were born to be empathically alive, not to dim yourself for those who prefer emotional disconnection, but to model authenticity for those ready to reclaim their buried feeling function. The world needs your light, but it needs it burning brightly, not hidden under the bushel of others' projections. Reframing the narrative. Your empathy is not your weakness. Others' inability to tolerate authentic emotion is their unhealed wound, projected onto your strength. When you apply Jung's integration principles, you become exactly what he believed empaths were meant to be. Bridges between humanity's emotional past and its emotional future. Keepers of authentic feeling in a world that has forgotten how to feel. Healers who maintain their own wholeness while helping others remember theirs. The deeper meaning of resentment. Jung's ultimate realization was not simply that people resent empathic authenticity, but that this resentment reveals humanity's unconscious grief over its lost emotional truth. Your light doesn't need to dim. What needs to brighten is the world's capacity to appreciate authenticity. You are not too much for anyone. The right people will celebrate your empathic gifts, while the wrong people will reveal themselves through their resentment of what they can no longer access within. A collective journey. If you recognize yourself in Jung's description, an empath who attracts unconscious resentment, you belong to a rare group Jung believed essential for humanity's emotional evolution. Your path of self-preservation and authentic expression connects you with countless others walking the same road. Together, you form the next stage of our emotional awakening, a community of light-bearers who refuse to extinguish their flame. Share in the comments what kind of light resentment you've experienced, and how you've learned to protect your empathic nature without closing your heart. Subscribe for deeper explorations of Jung's insights into empathic psychology and emotional authenticity. And if you're ready to dive further, watch my video, The Day the Empath Snaps, Carl Jung's most terrifying case, where I reveal how empaths transform from emotional absorbers into psychologically sovereign beings who can no longer be manipulated or broken by others. Thank you for watching. See you in the next dimension.